Hello there, and welcome to this album commentary again. Grab a drink, and let's see what I missed the first time around. So, Survivors of the Void, we're listening to Prelude by Frédéric Chopin, Prelude in D-flat major, and actually the first part of the Prelude. The second part will come at the end of the album. As I've said, I put this in the album because I wanted it to have a peculiar opener, a very grabbing opener, something that says things are not gonna be the same this time around. Sounds from the sonic palette of Risk of Rain start to come in. My Mini Moog emulated synth, which I used a lot in Risk of Rain 2. My CS80, my gamelan. They are accentuating the theme, pam 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 pam, stuff like that. You hear the bowed cello thingy that has been with the soundtrack from the beginning. It's the very first sound you hear on Risk of Rain 1. The mellotron, which is also very heavily featured on both soundtracks. This flute-like sound. Those bells from Risk of Rain 1 and the lead synth in the background, and the piano changes into a synth, the synth that is featured in many tracks in Risk of Rain 2, like Into the Doldrums and many others. And now we're moving into a Placid Island of Ignorance. If you pay attention to this kick drum, bum 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 bum. If it sounds confusing, it's because the bass, the metric bass of the piece is 5, and the kick drum plays on all the ones, and on the second bar plays on the third beat, on the fourth bar plays on the second beat. Dun 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 dun. And when I say bass 5, what I mean is that the piece is written 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, but the subdivision in its beat is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, 4. Again, the thump. This piece has this weird melody. I had this melody and I really wanted to bring it back into one of the other pieces or at some point in the soundtrack, but actually didn't manage to do it. Wouldn't fit in any of the other ones, so eventually I just thought I'll just use it because it works with the piece, but hopefully I'll get a chance to use it in the future, maybe in Risk of Rain 3 or something. And now we have the elements from the menu theme from Risk of Rain, the titular track. So this is all done by bringing in my stems from Engineer Edition. I just go and use them as samples all the time. I've used them throughout Risk of Rain 2 extensively. But for this soundtrack, I really consciously brought a lot of Risk of Rain 1 stuff back into the fold. This melody a little bit more pronounced here using the CS80. I don't actually own a CS80, it's a virtual instrument. It's one of the main sounds in Risk of Rain 2. And now new elements are coming into the track. I wanted this to be kind of a dreadful, ominous album. So especially in some of the tracks, there are particularly dark ambient sounds. I really like this guitar, like fuzz distortion here. This ostinato is the beacon that I can, hold on to if I'm lost in counting the track, because now it gets a little bit confusing because the drums play a bit more freely. It's dubbed by the organ here, and then the synth, elements keep piling up in traditional Risk of Rain fashion. This is essentially kind of a drum showcase here. I really love this drum groove. And the piece wraps up. The melody comes back, this weird melody. And notice the thumping kick drum again. And if you notice this hollow metallic sound, it's coming from the gamelan patch that I'm using. And I really liked it because it sort of represents the void. It's a gamelan sound I hadn't used before. You'll listen to it again here in just a second. I really, really liked it, and I use it extensively in the Void soundtrack. We've moved to Having Fallen It Was Blood. This piece, again, introducing elements from Risk of Rain 1. I brought stems from Hailstorm. Essentially brought the entire beat, the entire rhythm section, and wrote a new piece on top of that. It's a classic kind of flat 2 type riff that ends with a Risk of Rain motive. I really like this guitar part. This is a guitar part that is kind of playing tapping on a string. And because it's high and everything is like sliding and tapping on the string, it sounds like really messy and detuned. This is a flat 2 theme that I was talking about, and it ends with a Risk of Rain motive. And the organ on the background, introducing new harmonies. And then a guitar solo, kind of staying true to the Hailstorm patterns and all that stuff. This guitar-y thing comes back. This piece could have been used in Prince of Persia, The Two Thrones, I guess. My chiptune synths taking the riff. And the guitar here with a bit of funky delay and filtered, doing the outro. I've used this trick again in Deadworld or something. I really like it. I really like this kind of, deconstruction of sound. So, out of whose womb came the ice? This is essentially a reimagining of Into the Doldrums, but from the 7/8 pattern there, I adapted it into this 4/4, and I've paired it with this other ostinato from the subharmonicon synthesizer from Moog. And I created this kind of dual pattern thing, this kind of propulsion. I really like how this piece has turned out. I think this is the second piece I wrote for Survivors of the Void. Technically it's the third, but the second thing I put down was never released. And don't worry, the fact that it was not released means that it was never developed into something actual. It was like a bunch of ideas thrown together and that never got developed. So this wailing guitar sound I've created using an EBow. It's a device that you hold above the strings of an electric guitar and essentially vibrates them without end. So you get an endless sustain. We have the theme from Monsoon here, this kind of spacey alien thing, which is something that I've always felt a little bit weird about because it comes pretty much out of nowhere and had never had the chance to reuse it, and I was really happy that I could fit it into this piece and legitimize it, so to speak. And now for the first time in the piece we have this 6 chord, this flat 6 chord. And a nice quintupled fill. The wailing guitar comes back. We have developed the harmony a little bit by introducing the flat 6. And we've brought in this new drum part. The CS80 doing a little bit of melody work and a little bit of bass. Another guitar kind of tapping part here. And on the background, the opening theme from Pink Floyd's Pigs, parenthesis, 3 different ones, close parenthesis. Something that is a bit of a change of pace from the typical Risk of Rain stuff is at this moment, if we were doing a piece for the main album, a big crescendo would come, and instead here the break kind of reaches into a climax, but then we go back to the slow part, the outro, and the piece just ends. And now we're gonna go into Once in a Lullaby, which is actually the first piece that I got to record for the album. This one is a strange piece because it took me a long time to complete. One of the reasons was that I didn't have an oboe player until, not the very last minute, but until late in the game. And I wasn't sure if I'm gonna manage to find someone to do the job and replace the samples. And also because at some point during the big climax of the piece, the big crescendo, that happens, I wasn't sure how to build it up efficiently. And that's why I brought Calliope with the violin and do the voice and that stuff. That helped a lot, having a few more elements to play with. And also once I had everything down and recorded, working on the drum fills and building those up and making the drums more interesting and more tenseful, that really helped a lot. So we're hearing the English horn now in this part, which is kind of in the oboe family, in the woodwind family. It has a similar sound to the oboe, but is a little bit larger and is a bit deeper. For the longest time I wasn't sure if I'm gonna play this with a clarinet to kind of match the pair from Chanson d'automne. But in the end it just didn't fit with the rest of the piece, the sound of the clarinet, so I just went for the English horn, which was also convenient because I could use the same player. Usually players that play the oboe can also play the English horn and have one. But here's the oboe. This piece, I'm not sure that this is even a conscious choice of mine, but it reminds me a lot of a piece of music that I used to listen when I was a kid. I had it on tape and I really liked it. It was kind of a piece that I liked out of the blue because I didn't listen to Greek music a lot growing up. But it's a piece from a band called Opa. And Charis Alexiou, a great, amazing singer from Greece, was doing the vocals, and it's called "Με στα δυο της μάτια," into her eyes. Like the piece says, I want to look into her eyes. I'll put a link in the description so you can tell me, but it feels that I was subconsciously inspired by it. It's a piece that has been in the back of my head for a very long time, and I think it just came out here. So now we switched from 4/4 to 7/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the melody has adapted to fit the 7. So now we have elements coming in, the violin has come in, the acoustic guitars have come in. I really wanted this to be an anthem, to be a piece that kind of lifts you up. But I also had a problem because when I wrote this first, as I said, and then the soundtrack took a very different direction, kind of dark direction, so that's another reason why this piece took a long time to finish, because until the very end I wasn't even sure that I'll be able to use it, although I had sent it to Hope when we've been using it in the game. I was just not sure that it would fit. In the vinyl release of the album, this is the last piece of side A, so it's kind of, like an ending for the first part of the album, essentially. That's how I see it. These final parts, like this ending breakdown and the end with the oboe, these really took a long time to come up with, because I really wasn't sure how to finish this piece. My main problem with it is that it's just one idea, it's just one thing that gets repeating and repeating and repeating, so I wasn't sure how to do something that is different enough and conclusive enough. But leaving the oboe here with only the synth from like Into the Doldrums and all that stuff, this synth sound, just made sense. It really put everything together and, gave a sense of finality. And the last note just stays to the oboe. So, a boat made from a sheet of newspaper with this transformer sound, as I've mentioned before. So what I was thinking about this one is I felt that this is like a Tarantino-esque soundtrack. Like how the Reservoir Dogs are walking down the street in slow motion or something. This is kind of the vibe here. Like some sort of badass as enters stage. And that was the tape stop effect from Precipitation, from Risk of Rain 1. So the core idea for the piece is this jangly guitar here that sounds a little bit off, a little bit shaky. And then this synth. Again, this is kind of a flat 2 theme. But this chiptune thing comes from the rain formerly known as Purple. And just like the other boss track, Having Fallen It Was Blood, this too is not really heavy on compositional elements and stuff. It's just this beat going on pretty steadily and firmly. Like I came here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, but am I all out of bubblegum? This is the kind of idea, and just some solo. So I thought that I will bring a new sound to the soundtrack here. And I really wanted to have this very expressive lead. This is a synth, by the way, it's not a guitar. So I thought, let's bring back my lead from Deadbolt that I've used a couple of times over there. It has kind of this vocoder type sound. And I brought it in, and I really liked how it fit with this piece. So I used it again in The Face of the Deep during the dueling solo section. I really like the sound of drums here because the piece is a bit empty, And the drums are kind of have a bit more space to work. They just sound so large, and dominant in the mix, which I really like. Okay, so They Might As Well Be Dead. This is the piece that I mentioned in the other commentary that I really was looking forward to write. And I thought, yeah, this is gonna be an easy one. I'm just gonna do kind of a late 60s psychedelic style. I used a lot of reference tracks from The Doors and the Beatles and stuff, but this piece came through so many iterations and so many tests. It took me, I think, the longest in terms of like pure production time. I had this crazy schedule for this soundtrack that I planned to do 2 weeks per piece, more or less. And this one took me 3 weeks and really took me out of my schedule, which is one of the reasons that one of the pieces eventually became, something on top of Hailstorm, because I didn't have enough time to compose an entirely new thing. Anyway, so the idea here is that we're bringing back some elements, for example, from Monsoon or the tablas and stuff, and making this kind of psychedelic sound. And then the reintroduction of this melody from Moisture Deficit, from Risk of Rain 1, which was kind of a revelation to me when I realized that, okay, this is how this track is gonna go. Literally, for a long time, for the entire first week, I had nothing. I had to scrap almost every idea that I had for this piece, and it just didn't work. And then eventually I thought, hey, I can do this. This is a pretty, you know, psychedelic melody. Why don't I do something with that? So I brought it in and just everything clicked. There's this kind of roads on the background that I really like. And then we have the drums from Moisture Deficit. Well, not drums, some percussion stuff from it. Paired with the baglama, some sounds going backwards. These are like typical, you know, psychedelic techniques, especially during the 70s and stuff. Like backward sounds were all the rage. And now we have a very weird rendition of Double Fucking Rainbow here. These are all pieces that I kind of have thrown out separately during the first week of the piece, and then eventually I kind of managed to glue them together. It was really hard putting this piece together. I think this is the most guitars I've ever used, because eventually, as I mentioned in the other commentary, every piece of harmony of backing here is a guitar, with the tiny exception of the baglama and the drums. While playing solo on that piece for a long time, just jamming along, having this on a loop and playing, I came up with this. And then this, you know, retroactively became also the motive that I use in the opening. This this rhythmic pattern. And then we end up with the original loop, kind of ambience and things like that. Yeah, so this piece turned out to be quite popular and kind of rejuvenated a little bit the level that it was used on. It's something that I felt real happy about, actually. It was kind of an interesting thing that I had never considered. Okay, moving on. The Face of the Deep. This is a title that I pitched to Hopu for use on the DLC. Before we had locked on Survivors of the Void, I told them, how do you feel about the Face of the Deep? Because I knew that the theme is going to be a little bit this kind of underwater stuff with, you know, underwater creatures, the crabs and all that stuff, so... Anyway, it was not used, as we all know, but it is used for the piece. And I felt that the Face of the Deep is like a very fitting title for like the final boss or something. Another piece written in 5, with a lot of metric modulations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Switching here. As you can tell, I really like this motive here. And the saxophone. talk about this in the other commentary, but it was super fun for me doing these sessions with these guest musicians, especially with the saxophone. I was just, we recorded for a long time, had a lot of takes. It was challenging in the end because we had so many takes to actually come up with a comp that I was happy with, and I felt that, it represented both the talent of the player, but also fits perfectly with the sound of the piece and the game. I really wanted this piece to feel that there's this kind of madness going on, that things are going mad. So there's also this kind of crazy delay on the saxophone. I mean, if this is not madness, then I don't know what is. I mean, listen to it. Just going crazy. And even the rest of the band is like, what the fuck? And this kind of jazzy ending out of the blue. Εντάξει, νομίζω είμαστε okay. I meant this part to be a very drawn out and long drum solo part, like literally drum solo with just a little bit of guitar just keeping the beat. But in the end, unfortunately, I honestly didn't have the time to do it properly, so I thought instead of doing it mediocrely, let's just keep it just short and sweet and move on. I mean, the piece was long enough already. And a little bit of a choir here on the background, just for added epicness. And the synth just going crazy, I mean, you maybe win the fight, but at the cost of your sanity. I really love that ending, just with the sound of the floor tom kind of da do do boom. And now we're going into Who Can Fathom the Soundless Depths. It's one of the titles that probably my favorite of the album. The interesting thing about this piece is that I wrote it, I had it pretty much done to a certain degree, of course. I always keep, doing revisions and stuff. But I sent it to Hopu, didn't tell him anything about it being an adaptation of an existing piece of music. We hadn't discussed about the Prelude being used or anything like that. And I just sent it and we're like, okay, yeah, thanks. And then I hear from Paul and said, I've spent the whole day listening to Raindrop Preludes on YouTube. And I was like, oh, okay, so you got my little secret, And he told me that Jonathan, our community manager, had spotted it, which was fun. It was fun for me that, it was discovered quite fast. I really like that. So this is a piece that kind of evokes this sense of tension, this slow movement, this glacial movement, if you will. And with the exception of some very minor flourishes and, you know, adding like the Risk of Rain motive here and there with the gamelan and stuff like that, most of the notes you hear are actually written by Chopin. I haven't done much work, you know, rewriting on it or anything like that. I just took the notes from the sheet music. It's a piano piece, just piano, and I adapted it into all the instruments from the Risk of Rain, you know, music verse. One interesting, not funny, but maybe I'll think about it and laugh in a few years, story is that I had exported this piece. I had the piece in the game, that's all fine, but because of the method that I use to export files, when I take them out for mastering, one of the synths, this top synth, this new thing that comes here, was entirely missing from the mix that went to mastering. And when I say went to mastering, I mean to my other program in where I master my files, because I'm doing my own mastering. But the thing is that even if I'm doing it, I never noticed that there was a synth missing. So I exported it, I prepared, you know, my YouTube videos, I uploaded on the platforms for Spotify and iTunes and all that stuff. And I sent it away and I was like, okay, we're done. And this happened like a couple of weeks before the release. So on the day of the release, I put this to play on YouTube and I realized that I had exported the wrong thing. And I just went crazy. I was like, did I do that? Did I actually miss it? Did I master this entire track and never notice? And I realized that I've done this crazy mistake. And now it's replaced and had to, you know, do all this process of letting people know. I had sent it for mastering for vinyl and all that stuff. But I just realized how exhausted I was from this whole thing, you know, from writing this soundtrack in such a fast pace and just doing everything myself. And then I told myself that I'm never gonna do this again. I'm never gonna do things like, you know, export something and not check it because I'm tired, or master something and immediately, you know, upload it to services or stuff, without like leaving a day go by just to clear my head and double check. Which is something that I would strongly recommend to everyone. And I know it sounds like a super basic advice and you're gonna think, do you really not, you know, double check? And well, sometimes you just trust that things will go right. And you're so tired because I've listened to this piece like, you know, 10,000 times, and doing one last check is just too much. I guess it's kind of a bummer ending up on this story, but it is the end and we have to wrap this up. So yeah, it is what it is. So thank you very much for listening to this, presumably twice, and I hope I'll see you soon. Bye.